Let me first, of course, thank Trinidad and Tobago for tuning in to take a stand for Trinidad and Tobago. With just 7 days left for Labor Day, of course, we have a pretty short program, but I think a very intense program, because what I want to do today, I want to just take the few minutes that we have together, Trinidad and Tobago, and to really share with you some information with regards to the scale of what Labor Day really is, and to grasp and to appreciate what that struggle was for and the absolute sacrifice that would have been made by ordinary working people. It's absolutely remarkable when we think about it. Now, normally when we hear Labor Day, and this is of course what you would have been taught more or less in primary and secondary school. When you think of Labor Day, the first thing, of course, comes to your mind is one day, that's June 19th. Then the second thing is Uriah Butler, of course, the hero. And of course, the third would be the death of Charlie King. But I think what people have not really been taught or have been told is the scale in which that the events of June 80 years ago, June 1937, the absolute scale of that event, and the role that workers play in epic battle. It was indeed an epic battle against an empire, which was the British Empire. So one of the things that we would like, to share with you is what took place just after the death of Charlie King, because a number of things began to happen. In other words, June 19th, with the attempt to arrest Tubal Uriah Butler, and the subsequent death of Charlie King, the burning of Charlie King, a lot of things took place. And I think in order for us to truly appreciate Labor Day and appreciate June 19th and what it means, I think we need to grasp and to learn this afternoon what took place thereafter. Firstly, after the death of Charlie King, you had a gentleman by the name of Labre Charles who looked like Butler, and later on in that evening he was walking along the Faizabad main road there, heading towards the Charlie King Junction, when police shot and killed him right there that evening of June 19th. Today, there is a monument that stands there where a wreath is laid every year by the Progressive Trade Union Movement led by the OWTU. A wreath is laid. So that was the second casualty. But there is some more. You see, in an attempt to retrieve the body of Charlie King, a Sub-Inspector Bradburn was shot dead, and there were 6 other civilian casualties. Then 3 busloads of workers made an attempt to get to Forest Reserve from Faizabad, several hundreds at Ubat refinery, where they broke down the gate and attempted to burn down a gas station. And then we had 3 busloads and a lorry load of workers, 500 in all, blockade the road to the refinery and attack the police. The police opened fire, killing 3 and injuring other workers. At the St. Madeline's sugar factory, according to the report by the Colonial Office, they said, and they quote, they assaulted and insulted officials of the company, invaded the bungalows of the staff. That is in St. Madeline's sugar factory. And then in San Fernando, you had rioters, about 400 strong, armed with cutlasses, axes. They cut telephone lines to the power station. Then they proceeded to the telephone exchange, where the 1st and 2nd battalions of the Trinidad Light Infantry Volunteer Division and other police, armed with 4 machine guns, opened fire. They killed 2 and they wounded 8. Then there was an exchange of gunfire between the Butlerites and a patrol in Penal. 5 Butlerites were killed. Then according to the report, a roving band of some several hundreds traveled from the Waterloo estate, then the Wyerby estate, calling out the servants and other workers, closing down whatever was still functioning. On their way to Woodford Lodge, one worker was killed and another was injured by hostile fire. In Port of Spain, work at all industrial establishments had ceased. The Butlerites in the north, led by, of course, that powerful woman leader, Elma Francois, en masse closed down all the shops and business houses, which were still open. Then in Rio Claro, estates were closed down by some 500 to 600 strikers. Then on their way to surround the police station, again, the colonial forces opened fire, killing 5 and wounding some 20. Then at Dinsley village, some 300 Butlerites surrounded a police patrol. Eventually, the colonial authority had to call in 2 warships, HMS Ajax and the HMS Exeter. These warships were carrying some 210 heavily armed platoons. They were summoned and they came in. Naval reinforcements, in addition to some 2,000 heavily armed officers. That proved to be too much for the virtually unarmed mass movement in its monumental challenge to British colonialism. And you know when the hostilities ended? It took the colonial authorities until July the 6th. July the 6th, almost 3 weeks later, is when hostilities eventually ended. So it is not just one day, but what we saw were ordinary people, working people, taking on this incredible task of challenging the British Empire to change Trinidad and Tobago. Change Trinidad and Tobago in order for ordinary. This is the key part. They did not do that. They didn't engage in that kind of sacrifice so that there can emerge a Trinidad and Tobago that benefits just a few elites or benefits big business. No, they made that incredible sacrifice in order because they had a vision and they wanted to shape a Trinidad and Tobago that would benefit ordinary working people. That is the sacrifice that they made. And these were ordinary working people that made such sacrifice. Now I want to share with you a statement by Susan Craig in Smiles and Blood, an excellent book, an incredible author. She is still alive. She's still with us. That is Susan Craig. She is from Tobago. And I just want to salute Susan Craig, this amazing historian who have given us so much. And she has given us this incredible book called Smiles and Blood. And that provides really a very good picture of the impact and significance of the 1937 revolt. One can even go so far. When you now hear, maybe for the first time in your life, you listening to this program, you now would have heard the scale of that intervention. You can even call that a workers' revolution in Trinidad and Tobago at that time. So this is what she said, open quote. The period of the 1930s was a formative one in shaping the modern Caribbean. We have seen the combination of reforms which were sought by the authorities in 1937 as palliatives to labor in the hope that the system would remain intact. The Moyne Commission was to expand on this by advocating universal adult franchise and political decolonization. Altogether, these reforms were important because for the first time, labor had thrust itself into the political arena. The labor rebellions led, after the World War II, to mass political parties. And they opened the way for the West Indian nationalism and political independence. The vision of both the activists of the labor movement and the native intelligentsia in the 1930s was building of a Caribbean nation organized into a federal state. That is the impact of 1937. And it is truly a tremendous a tremendous impact. And it's not something that we should ever take for granted. Now, I share this information which you would not have read or would not have heard before. But it is our real history. I share it so that we can get a truly great appreciation for the scale of events in June, 80 years ago in 1937. These workers, again, as I said, and I want to emphasize that point again, these workers took on an empire. And it was not simply for wages, but they wanted to truly see a different Trinidad and Tobago. They wanted freedom from exploitation and oppression. They wanted a Trinidad and Tobago where ordinary working people can be treated with dignity. They made such an ultimate sacrifice. Many lost their jobs, others were detained by the police, and not to mention those that gave their life. They gave their life for shaping a better Trinidad and Tobago. Their sacrifice brought us universal adult suffrage. In other words, the right to vote. One man, one vote. And laid the foundations for independence and the ownership by us of the commanding heights of the economy. They did not sacrifice so much so that the ruling elite can continue to influence public policy which are against the interest of ordinary working people. These workers who made such a sacrifice didn't do so that their descendants would end up on boards, corrupting an already broken system and taking decisions against the interest of workers. And certainly, they did not make such a sacrifice so that you can have politicians now who are in power as a result of the struggle that they led, taking decisions whereby only workers were being made to carry the full burden of adjustment. They certainly did not make that sacrifice 80 years ago, Gary. They didn't make that sacrifice so that Christopher Phillip can die in complete indignity on the grounds in the hospital in 2017. Today, we have a broken health system. We have a broken education system. Today we have workers who work in extremely poor working conditions without any benefits. Afraid to join a union simply because they are threatened by their bosses. The fact remains that the struggle for a better Trinidad and Tobago has to continue. And so we will have to march on June 19th, Labor Day this year, 2017. We will have to follow in the footsteps of our ancestors, still holding to the belief that we can make a better country. Those who hold office are voted in by the vast majority of working people, yet their policies are only to the benefit of the financial elites who finance their parties. Today, I really wanted to play the voice of Butler, but it's proven to be a small technical difficulty. But we'll get it. We'll get it and you will hear it here on this program, because we would realize that the message is still extremely relevant. The message is critical. And it has to do with the fact that we still exist in a country where social inequality and social inequity exist, where economic injustice continue to exist. This has to be the idea of how we can reshape a Trinidad and Tobago, not in the image and likeness of the elites who have continued to rule this land, no, but the fact remains that those workers, ordinary working people who would make such an ultimate sacrifice, such an incredible sacrifice to shape a different Trinidad and Tobago, we have a responsibility, we have a duty in order to continue that journey to shape that kind of Trinidad and Tobago, a Trinidad and Tobago where ordinary people are treated with dignity and with respect. where we don't have workers working in extremely poor health risk conditions, life and limb at risk, where you have workers working, they can't get vacation leave. Imagine in 2017, they certainly can't get sick leave. If our female sisters get pregnant, they're sent home, hardly likely to be given a job again. We are existing in a situation where many employers are not even paying NIS, so that a worker can work for a company for 10, 15 years, only to find out at the end that the company has not been paying their NIS. We exist where many workers do not have, and I'm talking about thousands of workers, do not have index cost of living allowance to buffer the impact of inflation. We have now a Trinidad and Tobago where you have employers boasting of having hundreds of millions of dollars in profit, whilst at the same time sending workers home because of the economic situation. This kind of inequity and inequality cannot continue. And I dare say, as we call upon the spirit of the Butlerite tradition, there will be those of us who are willing to continue to take a stand. And you know, it is always amazing how politicians and big business, whenever workers take a particular stand, that all of a sudden they're talking about national interest. But I find it very difficult when I know for a fact our history tells us that it has been on the backs of workers in the first place that this country has been able to develop some of its key democratic institutions. So, how is it that when workers take a particular stand in order to bring some level of equity and justice in the system, all of a sudden that those actions are considered against national interest? Why is that considered against national interest? How is that considered against national interest? All right, I think we're trying to technically find a way. So we have something. It'll probably be a short clip, but is it, Gary? We could run it for a few minutes. So I want you to hear from, if you don't want to take my word for it, let's just hear from the chief servant himself. Gary, whenever you're ready.
The poor Indians and Negroes and sugar and oil respectively was nothing short of subhuman. It was clearly a case for early rectification and how to do it.
The 1930s is the high point for Afro-Indian solidarity.
So there you have it. Just a short clip. And you can be sure, leading up to Labor Day, we're going to play some more of the voice of the chief servant himself, because I think we need at this point, more than ever before, to draw on the spirit of the Butlerite tradition in order to, as Butler said, rectify the injustice that continue to exist in Trinidad and Tobago. We have to take action, direct action, in order to bring about a different Trinidad and Tobago. And you see, we cannot allow ourselves as working people, as ordinary working people, we cannot allow ourselves to lose so much of our self-confidence that we feel that the only way is to place the future of this country in the hands of the ruling elites, in the hands of the business classes. No. The majority of us are ordinary working people, and we work very, very hard to build this country. And therefore we must, therefore we have a responsibility to hold those who hold political office to account, but also we must be able to seize the moment, seize the historical opportunity to reshape our country, to make it a different place, a better place for us to live and for our children and our grandchildren. we must continue to take a stand, and take a stand we must as we look towards the heavens with a true joy in our hearts, knowing that we stand on the right cause of justice as we march on Labor Day, June 19th, 2017. Thank you, Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you, Gary, for this installment of Taking a Stand for TNT, and I look forward to next week, Monday. Well, of course, I wouldn't be here. I would be on the streets in Faizabad, and I'm hoping to see the I-95 family, of course, down there with us. And well, I see the 2 o'clock news update is here, so I will be signing off now. And thanks for those of you all who joined me on the live Facebook broadcast. And so I would like everyone to have a safe week, and let us stand strong as we go forward ever, backward never, forward ever, backward never.